Queen's coming.
All right, I'm just giving everybody some more time to get logged in this morning. And if you're not speaking, remember, put your phone on mute, computer on mute. All right, I think we'll be ready to roll. Let's go ahead and scorecard team. Are you, sorry, are you ready to provide an update this morning?
Noelle has it this morning. Noelle, are you on yet?
I'm on. She said mobile app.
Mobile app, did you have anything? I can skip and come back.
Sorry, I thought that you said scorecard. There is no really big updates on the mobile app, just establishing processes, nothing client side.
Awesome, thank you so much. All right, and then next up, we have our scorecard team, and that'll be Noelle.
So for feedback for the week, we're at 91%. For the month, we're at 93%. And the year, we're at 89%. And we had two really good reviews, both from submitters. One was from AAMC. It said this is one of the easier electronic submission process. Instructions were clear, and being able to complete the task list in any order was very beneficial. And the other was from FMI. It said the entry process was very clear, and I liked that I could save my sections and see a preview before hitting the submit button.
Awesome, thank you so much, Noelle. And next, we have our EdHard team. What you got?
Hey everyone, for our percentages of happiness, we
This
are
conference
100%.
will now be recorded.
We are 100% on the week, 71% on the month, and 83% on the year. And there was no positive feedback to report this week.
Awesome, thanks so much, Craig. All right, and then next up, Rep team. What you got?
Okay, the web team, we actually are getting feedback because I guess the websites are a hit this week. And we have 75% for the week, 80% for the month. As usual, some of the feedback isn't anything about the website or the content, or I mean, it's more about content, not the functionality of the site. There was one feedback from FVMA, video content great, video quality amazing, very clear, sound quality wonderful, very clear. And then they said, and the testing questions though were very wordy. So never mind about that. ASQ, great, keep up the good job. And the Be Now, great job. And there were more than one of those. So not bad.
Thanks so much, Ms. Sharon. And then next up, Beth Scrum. What you got?
We are in our second week of our third Expo Harvester Roadrunner sprints. In this one, we're making sure that all the booth enhancement credits work is finished off on the Expo side so that we can start actually implementing that on the website floor plan next. And then we just started 2 new sprints today, one for EventScribe Live and one just for EventScribe. And we're just continuing the work that we kind of already went over on Friday. I also did upload that sprint review to the Scrum Events website. And just if anyone did not receive their credentials for that website, let me know and I'll make sure that you get them. Because I think not everyone was in the mailing list for that one. So just feel free to reach out and I'll make sure that you you can log in there and find everything. And then for other Roadrunner work, we still have some of the app and some stuff that Pete's working on happening outside of the sprints, but that's also still going at full speed. And we have our Android qualification. I realized that last week they said it was at 97%, but I was wrong. It is at 91%. So just a little bit, still nearing the end, but just a little bit lower than I thought. And I think that's it from my end.
All right, and then Megan Cap said Expo Sprint Review is this Friday at 2 p.m. as a reminder as well. All right, and next up we have Client Success. What you got?
Hey, thanks, Nakia. So we have 66 scorecards closing this week. About 48 of them are on Friday, and almost all of those are AA pediatrics. So I know they kind of break them into smaller scorecards to manage it a little easier. But Thursday and Friday of this week, our team will probably be fairly busy answering phones. No apps, so to speak, of closing are working this week. And we did have one feedback come in. It was a 5-star from Megan from AA Pediatrics. They said, excellent help with my question. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mike O'Malley. And what you got, Melissa, with the boomerang feedback?
Okay, so for scorecard, we had 33 at 5 stars. We had 315 total closed this month, 96% on time. At Harvester, we have 32 at 4.9 stars. And Expo, we have 19 at 5 stars. And then for both Ed and Expo, we have 765 boomerangs closed at 87% time. The app had 4 ratings at 5 stars, 56 boomerangs closed, 80% on time. And the web team, we have 14 ratings at 5 stars. We do have 2 testimonials. One is Lacey Kishner from NHIA. The rebooking tool has been a vital resource in implementing refunds and rollovers for a meeting cancellation. With so many companies choosing to move their booths and sponsorships to the following conference, the user-friendly interface allows to move credits and purchase items seamlessly for each exhibitor or sponsor. Additionally, I'm easily able to track those credits in the new conference Harvester through Cadmium's financing report. Using the rebooking tool has made rolling over and tracking finances exponentially more efficient and accurate. Keep up the amazing work. And then Angela Smith-Young from AAMC also submitted a testimonial. She said, I'm very satisfied with the Cadmium Abstract Management product. The software is easy to navigate, customer service is great, and I love being able to download help tips and participate in the many webinars that Cadmium offers. I always receive timely responses for assistance, which is a great benefit during the stressful moments. Overall, I highly recommend Cadmium to any organization in need of an abstract management software. And I believe that Megan Broadbeck has reached out to get photos. Angela has in the system as well. And then Rachel's working on the mock-up. So when users log in to the different webinars, they'll see the testimonial along with those people photos. And that's all I got.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Melissa. And marketing, what you got today?
Hey guys, so we're really doubling down on these webinars. Last week's webinar with George and Sharon, that was on accreditation. We had 295 people register and 221 actually showed up. 75 stayed to the end, which is awesome, especially considering the content went for an hour and a half. A lot of people had questions, and George kind of ran a marathon answering them all. He did a really awesome job on that. That being said, we have a few more webinars coming up. We have the users group tomorrow. Pete's going to be running that. On Thursday, we have a webinar for sponsorship. And then we have some additional webinars coming up the following weeks. Most importantly is one with Sponsorship Boost and Conference Managers, which is going to be on next Tuesday. You can go to cadmiumcd.com/webinars to see all of those upcoming events. And then we're also putting some stuff together for the client game night that's coming up. And I'm working with Josh and some of the development team to try to get Eventbrite hooked up as a registration platform for EventScribe Live for both the game night and the webinar we're having with Sponsorship Boost and Conference Managers. So keep an eye out for all of that. Also, we hit 133 request information forms this month. You know, the sales team is probably sweating with all those leads coming in, but I think that just goes to show how we're positioning ourselves and what we're all doing to kind of talk with clients and figure out how to help them adjust during this time. And I think it's a positive trend for the future as well, with winning business for the rest of the year. So that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Mike Doan. And I do have a client feedback from Jill Wilhite at LP-ETC. My experience with CadmiumCD has been nothing short of excellent. Their products are intuitive for both user and administrator. I especially like how, as a planner, I can go in myself and make changes to my products so the edits are live in real time. I have found the support staff incredibly helpful and accessible. Joe Harbach has been my consultant, and I couldn't be more pleased with his service, expertise, and turnaround time. CadmiumCD has improved the efficiency of their services we provide our clients and upped our game. Highly recommended. So yay for Joe. Woo! And then before we move on to our next piece of business, did anyone else have any client kudos that they wanted to add as well? All right. And next up will be Michelle has some updates for us. Michelle?
Thanks. So I wanted to tackle a couple of things that I just wanted to get out in the open because I don't want people thinking we are hiding or otherwise not sharing information. So one of the things is that teen who was on Gary's team's last day was on Friday. She was quote unquote officially laid off from Cadmium, but the reality is that teen was struggling as a single mom to find care for her child because of COVID-19. And underneath the new CARES Act, there is a Family Medical Leave Act, which is FMLA. They renamed it, so it's EFMLA, Emergency FMLA, which basically says that people are allowed to take emergency leave if they are not able to find daycare because of COVID-19. So teen definitely had that option, but after talking to her about what the repercussions were to what her new rate of compensation would be underneath this CARE Act versus what her rate would be under the CARE Act if she had been laid off, it was decided that it was most beneficial from a financial perspective for her to be laid off by the company. So I don't want anyone to think that Cadmium is laying off people. We are assuring everyone that they will have a position as long as they stay with us through the end of this year. STG, as I had mentioned in the past, has essentially put $2 million of their own money plus a $500,000 revolving loan into our bank account so that as we struggle with the impacts of COVID-19, we will still be able to successfully operate. The number one killer of small businesses, in case you are not watching the news or haven't heard of this, is the fact that people run out of cash. So without cash, your business cannot survive, and there's no other way around that. So again, just to make sure that everyone understands why that was done, it was basically done in Team's best interest given the current situation that she was experiencing, being a single mom and not being able to find childcare because all the daycares are currently shut down in the state of Maryland. She understands that we are not necessarily able to guarantee that we will have a job open for her between now and the end of the year. So I don't want people to think that if you do choose to be laid off, that we can guarantee reemployment, because unfortunately we don't know what's going to happen for the rest of the year. We can only guess based on information that we get, just like you guys do, on what's going on in the news. So I just wanted to clarify that for everybody so that if you heard that she was laid off, the answer is she was officially laid off by the company, but it was basically done at her request, if that makes sense to everybody. So any questions or comments about that? Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to show you guys was just a breakdown of where our products are this year versus last year as a total, and then this year, year to date. So I'm going to actually show you, thank you, where we are versus last year in entirety. And then I'm going to show it to you versus this year, year to date. So why do I want to show you it in entirety first? Because there's some products that are obviously being hit harder than others based on what's going on with COVID-19. So I'm just going to give me a second and see if I can expand this for a sec. So I'm just going to try to make this larger. Okay. So all right, so one of the things I want to draw your attention to is Abstract Scorecard and the app were both $2 million products last year. They were actually about $7,000 differential across them. So last year, app did, I think, $2,008,000, and Scorecard did $2,001,000. For those of you who've been in the company for a while, you realize that Pete and I have a little friendly competition as to what products will do better on an annual basis. An app edged out barely the Scorecard last year by measly $7,000. The point being is that we don't really expect the Abstract Scorecard to be hit hard by COVID-19, but we don't necessarily expect it to grow at any appreciable rate this year either. So we're probably looking at doing around the same amount of sales this year as we have in the previous year, with maybe a 5 to 10% increase in growth rate. Why do I say that? I just don't think a lot of people, now there are exceptions obviously, but unless we have something major like RSNA close or something like that, there's just not a lot of people looking to make radical changes in who their event technology providers are. So year to date, 572,000 sales on the Scorecard, and then last year we did 2 million. Audio proceedings, we obviously expect a huge change. Year to date, we've done $131,225. Last year, when you include the travel days spent on the road by the team, we did 1.16 million. So obviously any money, so we collected 174,000 this year for audio. Last year we did 1.16. We're expecting most of that to disappear in 2020 and hope to segment or augment some of that with the EventScribe Live, with the live streaming service. But we do expect a substantial dip in this revenue of at least $500,000 to maybe $600,000 versus last year. Conference logistics, we're not really expecting to grow or change that number too much. The integrations web services, it's a little too early to see exactly how that's going to be hit, but we don't really expect a major change as far as the amount of revenue that we're collecting from web services. Digital signage, year to date, we collected 28,000. Last year we did 59,000. We're not really expecting a lot of signs to occur for the remainder of the year. So I think around 30,000 is probably the most that we'll see from digital signs. The app is a really hard hit, in case you haven't been aware of that. So year to date, we did 515,000 essentially. Last year, we did just over 2 million. I really don't think we'll do more than $600,000 this year. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But at this time, anyone who is going virtual for the most part is choosing to eliminate the app and focus more on the website versus the app. So I really don't think we're going to see a lot of improvement in this amount of money that we've already collected. Again, I'm suggesting it's going to be around 600 to 650 by the end of the year, which, as you may or may not be able to do the math quickly in your head, is about 1.4 million dips from last year. The itinerary planner, so far year to date, we've done 242,000. We're hoping with a lot of the new work that we've been doing on the live streaming that we'll be able to actually grow this versus last year. So we're hoping that we might be able to grow that by 15 to 20%, which sounds like a lot, but in real numbers, it's about $200 to $250,000, just in case you're wondering about that math. So again, we've seen significant hits on the app. We've seen significant hits on the recordings. And then the other product that we know we're going to see a huge hit on is Hermes. So Hermes, we did roughly just under 300,000 last year. This year, before COVID hit, we had done $71,000 worth of work. We believe that this is probably all we're going to see this year. I don't really think we're going to see any more Hermes projects for the remainder of the year. Again, I hope I'm wrong, but just based on conversations that we've been having with fall event planners, we think most of them are planning to be a virtual event at this point in time. Again, hoping that we're wrong, but planning on this product also being heavy hit. The speaker harvester, we're hoping to see a 15% growth. Last year we did about 1.5 million. Exhibitor, we're hoping to see a decent growth there as well. Last year we did 613,000. Year to date we've done 228,000. We're hoping that by the end of the year this is close to 1 million. Most people are planning for their 2021 event. Expo Harvester work is typically done or starts the year in advance of their actual meeting. So I don't think that's going to be as hard hit as the other product lines. And I think, again, the planner, we should see some growth in there. So I just kind of wanted to show you guys where we're expecting the major hits to occur this year so that you guys can kind of get a feel for it. Survey Magnet, we also think will take a hit. Sharon and George did a great job last week. Maybe that will convince a lot of the people to create enduring quizzes rather than the evaluations, and maybe that will help augment some of that loss. Last year we did $512,000 in Survey Magnet. Year to date we've had $116,000 in sales that have closed or been paid for, I guess is a better way of saying that. We think that this will drop though, probably by about 20 to 25% versus last year. So we're expecting this to dip to about 400,000 for the total year. Again, let's hope that I'm wrong, but that's what we're kind of budgeting for this year. So where do I expect to end up the year? I'm hoping we hit at least 7.5 million. As of today, we've done 2.4 million. We have a little over $700,000 in receivables, which will, if and when everyone pays, that will bring us up to about 3.1. And then obviously as we complete work for the remainder of the year, that number should grow. So year over year, we are expecting to probably have a 20% hit on our bottom line, reducing this, I hope, no more than to about 7.5 million. And I'm hoping is a key word that we won't dip much below that number. So how is our expenses being affected? So obviously we had the cut in payroll, but you can see last year, 6.4 out of that 9.2 million. When you do that, and that's not including the taxes. So bear with me 1 second. So you can see payroll was essentially 70% of last year's cost. The other costs include professional fees, product costs, shipping, travel. Obviously, the travel and the shipping are pretty much going to disappear this year. So the total travel and entertainment should decrease substantially versus last year. Utilities, we rented the extra 25% of the building, plus we added Mitel, so we should see a slight increase versus last year when all of that falls under the utilities bucket. And then you can see total expenses. So as of today, we've had total expenses of $2.45 million. Now operating income is a loss of $24,000 at this point in time. Last year we had total profitability of $777,000. So one of the things I wanted to show you is where we are versus the same period last year. So again, you can see that on a per product basis where we're at. So we have fallen slightly in our total income. Last week, I had mentioned that first week that we had done less than last year. So last year at this point in time, we had done 2.5 million. This year at this point in time, we've done 2.4 million. So we've seen a 4% loss, but please realize that from accounts receivable, we're essentially, I think we're up to like day 30, day 35. And that's essentially our invoices are sent 30 days in advance of when they are due. So we're just starting to see the ramifications of COVID-19 on our sales. One of the things I do want to point out though is at this point in time, we've only seen one payroll with a 25% reduction in the salary. And I just wanted to show you where, if you look at total payroll expenses versus last year, we are still over even with that 25% reduction of where we were last year. And you might say, why is that? It's because everyone that we essentially hired from April 27th of 2019 through today is basically added on top of that. Again, remember that we were gearing up to hit just over 11 million this year, and we were hiring to hit that number to make sure we were staffed appropriately. Obviously, 11 million number looks very different from a staffing perspective than a $7.5 million staffing perspective. So this is the number that we really have to keep an eye on, and that's one of the reasons why everyone has experienced a 25% decrease in pay. So with that being said, I know it's kind of hard to read these numbers and maybe a little bit hard to think your mind around this. Do you guys have any questions? Maybe you could submit them through the chat feature if you have any questions at this point. If not, that's okay too. I just wanted to try to explain where we were versus last year, where we think we're going versus the entire year for last year versus this year, which products have been obviously hit the hardest, where we think we'll wind up with each of those products, and then to see if you have any questions about any of that. So are our rejections going to remain the rest of the year, or only for 7 cycles? That's an excellent question. And a lot of it is going to be dependent on how many clients we can add and how many clients decide to buy into the virtual options with us. So obviously, if we can't show that we can at least match what we did last year, it's going to be really hard to justify returning people's pay, because at this point in time, the company is looking at probably a $1 to $2 million loss by the end of the year if we can't improve things and have people go virtual. So with a $1 to $2 million loss, it's really hard for me to go to STG and say, we need to improve everyone's salaries, because obviously everyone's working really hard, which I totally know you all are. Unfortunately, given the situation, which none of us can control, it's really going to be dependent on how many of our clients we can convert to our virtual options, as well as how many new clients we can win in because we have these virtual options that they may not have had in the past. So it's a little bit early for me to say whether or not we'll be able to eventually return. I know STG has told me that if we make any profit at all between now and the end of the year, that we would return it to the employees. They're not intending to have Cadmium make any profit this year, nor that they also can't necessarily take a $1 to $2 million loss and keep every employee whole. So that's just the reality of the situation. And I'm sorry that we are all in this situation. For those of you who are wondering, yes, Pete and I also took the 25% reduction. So it's not just hitting you guys, it's hitting everybody as well as everybody under the STG portfolio. So just to recap, STG portfolio companies are not eligible for a lot of the federal government's bailout funds because we become a company with more than 500 employees once we include all the portfolio company staffing, which is required for a private equity group. So unfortunately, a lot of the bailouts are intended for smaller companies such as ourselves we're ineligible for because of the private equity group. And to be fair to all the other mom and pop shops on Main Street, fortunately, STG has given us that $2.5 million, which again, without that, we would have had to talk about layoffs. But fortunately, because they're willing to give us the runway needed to basically recover from this, hopefully we can come out somewhat whole as a staff. So are clients paying their invoices or are they objecting to the charges? Both. So we do have what's called a force majeure clause in our master agreements. The force majeure clause says that clients have to pay for any work completed up to the point of cancellation. One of the great things about you guys punching into the projects is we know exactly how much time we've spent on every project. So it's very easy for me to go back to the client and say, we've spent X number of hours on your project, therefore we've completed all the work before it was canceled and you are still responsible for it. They grumble, they complain. Some of them pay it. Some of them say, I don't like this. Why do we have to pay? Because we weren't able to use it. I don't have a lot of sympathy for them. And we have a discussion. Now, whether or not they still decide to pay their invoice, it's a little too early to tell, again, because our invoices, once we send them, aren't due for 30 days. So a lot of those invoices are still in the process of being current and haven't been paid yet. But I do anticipate that people will definitely be slow in making those decisions. When we make a decision about CADCAR 2020, May 15th is the deadline I've given myself. Obviously, it's going to maybe be moved to a completely virtual conference. We will have it in some shape or form, but most likely at this point in time, it's probably going to be predominantly virtual. It's hard to believe that the governor of Maryland will allow us to assemble with the number of people that we're planning on having. Plus, there's a significant cost ramification in having it, and if we don't have a lot of people show up for it, that's a huge detriment as well. Personify did issue a press release last week. I shared it with some of the people in our company where Personify had PersoniFest, which is their users group meeting. So Personify owns one of our competitors, A to Z, as well as their own AMS company. They decided to have a virtual event last week, and they had over 2,000 people for their virtual event. So if CADCon in person is canceled, there's still a huge possibility that we will still be able to reach a lot of our clients and maybe even more clients than we had originally anticipated. So we have a 5-year lease on our building, so we're not able to eliminate the lease on our building. We would have to pay it out regardless if people are there or not. So that doesn't make a lot of sense at this point in time as far as trying to reduce our real estate holdings. We do have contracts in place for the cleaning service. To be honest, the rent expense and the cleaning service, when you look at the total cost for that versus our entire sales, it's basically 2 or 3% of our sales. So if you and what I mean by that is we our rent cost for Newport Drive is approximately $20,000 a month. If you multiply 20 times 12, it's 240,000. If you divide 240,000 by 9.2 million, the percentage gets to 2 to 3% of our sales. So even if we were to say, okay, we're no longer going to have a building, everyone's going to be working from home, you're only talking about lowering our expenses by 2 to 3%, which may or may not seem like a lot. From my perspective, it's not a lot. And we gain a lot of benefit from having a building where we can all work out of, especially when all of our kids are at home and driving us crazy. So are the recent RFPs for 2020 or 2021? Both. So we are getting a lot of RFPs for 2021. We're also getting RFPs for taking events virtual in 2020. Talking to a lot of clients, as Mike mentioned, we're getting a lot of requests. A lot of people are trying to understand what a virtual event is, how they can do it, what the costs are, and then what's the timing looking like. I would like to describe in the most polite way our March conference planners more like deer in headlights, where no one was obviously expecting the Spanish Inquisition. It happened, and now they're trying to figure out how to recover if they do recover, or if they try to go any type of virtual component. And then other people are just saying, you know what, we're just canceling altogether. The fall conferences are the ones where they have the benefit of time. So they can look at what virtual options exist. They can think about their plan for their fall conference, if they're going to have a hybrid event or if they're going to go completely virtual. I had 2 conversations last week, unfortunately, with clients with February conferences who are also looking at hybrid and virtual options at this point in time. So one of them was QuiltCon. QuiltCon normally attracts 10,000 attendees. I'm guessing, and you're guessing, that their attendees are in an older demographic, and they're very concerned that if a vaccine isn't in place in time for QuiltCon, which they don't expect it to be, that they don't want to jeopardize their 10,000 members with the possibility of having them catch COVID-19 at their event. Another one was National Association of Home Builders. Home Builders has a huge event each year. We're talking 60 to 70,000 people. And they are looking at hybrid options at this point in time, with the thought that they might have to go virtual as well. So will this possibly extend into spring? I think it's a very high probability that we're going to be dealing with this until we have a vaccine and or a drug to combat COVID-19. So the real challenge is to see how much we can do on the virtual front to convince our clients to use our virtual options and hopefully make up some of that lost revenue that they would have spent with, for example, audio recordings, instead of using audio recordings, doing live streaming or some similar service, so that we can hopefully still retain some type of revenue from them. Do I have a lot of hope for some of the other products? Everyone knows that the app is an on-site tool. Until we get back to being on-site, I don't anticipate a lot of sales for the app for the remainder of 2020. Again, I hope I'm wrong. I hope we find a drug. I saw on the news today that there's some drugs that are being investigated. They're showing very, very good promise. If we can find a drug that people can take if they have COVID-19, that's going to help tremendously as well. But until we have either a drug or a vaccine or both, I don't think we're going to see live events as we know it return anytime soon. Do you think our virtual products are going to attract potential new customers? And yes. I absolutely believe that a lot of the virtual products that we are designing right now are attracting new clients. The biggest question is how many? Please realize that as of March 1st, we had about $8.5 million worth of sales. We were on track to hit around 11 million, which is basically $2.5 million jump in contracts by year end. If we think that we are going to be able to replace all of the revenue that we lost with virtual products, I don't think that's realistic. At least not for 2020. Maybe for 2021 it is. But sales take time. People have to basically look at our solution, get pricing from us, look at our competitor solutions, get pricing for them, and then make a decision as to what's the best fit for them. So we're all trying really hard but I just want to make sure that everyone kind of understands what the reality looks like. Because even as we are winning some great new contracts, for example, BNow, which was offshore wind, it went so successful that they want to repeat it 11 more times over the next 18 months. That total contract value, if they sign it, is worth about $50,000. So that's a huge win. Brand new client, huge amount of money. But the reality is that I'm not sure how many of those clients we're going to have over the next 6 months. You know, maybe it's more than I think. I don't know what to tell you, except, well, I don't count on anything until we actually have the signed contract. So again, the sales team is doing everything we can think of to help with this process. Having those webinars is a huge help. Just explaining how our products can be reused in the virtual environment is a huge help. I think we're doing everything we can as a company to move forward and get through this. But the financial reality is that it's hit us hard. And I don't know how else to tell people that. It's hit us really hard. And the one thing that is the majority of our expenses and has been the majority of our expenses since day one is payroll. And unfortunately, that's really the primary lever that we have as far as not hiring anyone, obviously. Raises are frozen, obviously, and then the pay cuts, obviously, as well. So again, it's not a good thing for anyone, but I am very, very proud of how you have all contributed to helping us pivot really, really quickly to a virtual environment, and all the products and features that we're adding at a tremendous rate has helped the sales team tremendously as well. So we'll see. We'll just see how successful we can be over the next 3 to 4 months as far as what our clients are willing to pay for and if they're willing to use our virtual platform or someone else. And at this point in time, it's a little too early to tell. Okay, I think that's everyone's questions. Again, if you have other questions, feel free to send them to me after you've had time to digest this. But my goal is for you guys to understand exactly where we are, what we're looking at for the remainder of the year, how you can help. You can obviously help in a variety of ways that you've already been doing. Help us develop new products, help us develop new examples, help us explain features and functionality to clients as we develop them. And obviously with the webinars and all the other stuff that we have going out to clients, just keeping them aware that CadmiumCD has a virtual option so that we at least have a chance to get in front of them and hopefully win some of that business away so that we can add to our bottom line for this year would be a huge help. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, well, thanks. I know this went a little bit long. I just wanted to kind of give everyone a realistic picture so that as you do hear that we're winning new contracts, you don't think, oh, that means we are back to being back to normal. I hope we are at some point, quote unquote, equal to last year. If we came out with having the same sales as last year, that would be a huge win. But I don't think that's realistic. I'm just hoping we can hit the 7.5 million and we don't dip below 20% from last year. All right. Thank you for your time. Talk to you guys soon.